Okay, it is 10:01. We are still managing to admit people into the rooms. We do have over 100 people on currently. We had over 200 people register for today's event, and I want to thank all of you for doing wonderful things and joining us in this virtual adventure. My name is Lucy Hawker-Smith. I am the agent in Mercer County for Family and Consumer Sciences, and you are logged on to It's Not Your Mother's Sewing Room. We absolutely are so excited to have you join us. If you haven't already taken the poll on whether or not this is your first time Zoom experience, it is closed. Someone has done that for me. It's great. 59 of you all voted on that, and I'm going to share the results right now. This is an attempt to get you all more familiar with polling. We're going to poll you several times during today's event. And so we want you to get comfortable voting and seeing the results. And so it looks like 90% of you, or those that voted, this is not your first time using Zoom, but we do have about 10% who this is the first time. So we will want to make sure that you all are familiar navigating your controls and getting everything done that needs to be done. So my reminders I have here, if you haven't already done so, we ask that you mute your audio. Myself, as well as the other agents, have the ability to mute you should you accidentally become unmuted during the event and we start to hear some background noises. We can actually mute you. And we ask that you stop your video except for the speakers. And so there are a few exceptions to this rule, but we ask that with over 100 people, we've got 107 now on us, that this helps reduce distractions for other people so that we can really pay attention to the speakers. And when I'm done speaking, you won't see me again. I'm going to turn my video off. So we do strongly encourage the use of the chat box for all of your comments, your sidebar conversations, and your questions. Our agents will be monitoring that chat and will share those when appropriate in the program. I already mentioned having several polls planned for you, and our poll coach, Rita, give them a wave there. Rita is our poll coach. She will be talking you through all of the polls, and I will stop sharing the poll results for now. We do have an interpreter present for American Sign Language, so we are glad to be able to offer that as an additional service. We will begin and end with a brief Qualtrics survey. For those of you that haven't used Zoom before, you don't see the chat that is in the box before you log on. So I wanted to make sure that we had as many people on logged on as possible before I shared that Qualtrics link. I will put that in the chat here in just a second. And so if there are multiple people in one space watching, what we ask is that you re-click that link and submit that survey for each individual that is in your space watching today's program with you. Also, if you have questions during the program, feel free to call my office here at the Mercer County Extension Office. I can put that number in the chat, but it's 859-734-4378. And likely Ann or Tiffany will be able to answer your questions as I will be doing some clicking behind the scenes. At this point, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce all of our agents. So agents, get ready to show your video and wave in Brady Bunch style, if you will. We do want to acknowledge that Anderson County is a part of our Fort Herod area. Unfortunately, they have a vacancy with no FCS agent in place, but they do have a couple of other agents there. So if Anderson County, if you want to give us a show and a wave where you all are watching from. Also, we have from Jessamine County, Miss Carly Giles. Give us a wave, Carly. Awesome. Thank you. We also have in Boyle County, Miss Alethea Price, and she's given us a wave. Thank you, Miss Alethea. In Woodford County, we have Miss Elizabeth Coots. Thank you, Elizabeth. I mentioned I'm Mercer County, Lucy Hawker Smith. In Franklin County, we also have Tamara McGee. Tamara, are you going to give us a wave? I don't see you. There's 5 pages of people here, though, so. Okay. And in Lincoln County, we have Rita Stewart, our pole coach. And last but certainly not least, in Garrett County, we have Mary Hickson. And I will turn the microphone over to Mary Hickson in just a moment. In that time, just know that we have the ability to stop your video as well. And so we can do that, and we may turn your video off if you haven't already done so. If there are no questions or comments that you want to put in the chat box, I will launch one poll as Mary gets started. So Mary, if you want to take over the mic, I'm going to mute and stop my own video.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. And I'm so glad to welcome everybody. And thank you for joining us today. We have quite the day planned this morning, and we hope everybody will enjoy it. I don't know about you guys, even before COVID-19 started, I could spend, a couple hours, 3 hours, maybe even longer sitting at my sewing machine when I'm on a project, when I'm on a deadline, or I have something I'm really interested in sewing, and computer work as well. We can sit and spend a lot of time sitting at our computers. So we know that you need to do some stretches and movement. And so our first speaker today is going to help us realize that. So we're going to turn it over to our coworker who is in Shelby County, Sheila Fawbush. She's the FCS agent there. So take it away, Sheila. We're going to pin you.
Thank you, Mary. Can you all hear? Welcome to Shelby County, everyone. We're doing one of our favorite things this morning, and we're getting ready to move our bodies in a wonderful way. Our bodies are moving machines, and they're made to move. And when we get ready to do stretches, we really need to warm up first. So wherever you are, I would like you to stand up where you are and just start moving your feet. Just walk, like you can walk in place. Have a sturdy chair beside you, because if you use a rolling chair at your sewing machine, you're going to need a sturdy chair that holds you in place. So everyone is moving feet, we're moving arms. I'm going to think that you all probably been moving around, so we don't need that traditional warm up. We're just going to spend a couple minutes warming up and go right into stretches. But normally, if you're sitting at your sewing machine and you get up, you need to warm up for 5 minutes before you start some stretching movements. So that could just be moving arms, marching. If you're comfortable, you can go higher with your knees. Just going to take a couple of minutes. Warming up is walking, moving around, checking the laundry. One of my Master Crowing volunteers says she does laundry on the day she sews, so she can get up and check the washer dryer. We'll slow this down and learn about deep breathing. So I want everyone to put their hand on their tummy, that's your belly button, wherever your tummy is, and just breathe your normal way. Most of us breathe from the neck up. We don't really deep breathe. Deep breathing makes a difference to get more oxygen flowing to your blood and your brain. If I'm sewing, I want my brain to function at its very best. So I'm going to be doing some deep breathing. It looks like this. Breathe in through your nose so that your hand comes out. So breathe in deeply through your nose. And then out through your mouth. So let's try that again. This is another way to warm up, getting ready for stretches. Your hand is here. You can see my hand moving. Breathing in. The nose, out through the mouth. So anytime you take a break in your sewing day, and you want to do stretches, be sure you do walk around like we were doing before you start your stretches. Another way to deep breathe, and deep breathing is so good to help you de-stress. Put your head and your arms down. Breathe in through your nose, breathing in. And your head rises up, looking up, breathing in, and then out. We'll be incorporating that in our stretches today, so we want to learn that technique. Again, your tummy should be coming out, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Very good. Now, we haven't talked about this, but I want to get us to just think about moving, and while we're moving, we'll talk a little bit more. Watch where your hand goes. Be sure your feet are at least hip apart. Be close to that sturdy chair if you lose your balance. We're just going to watch our hands start to move and go around toward our back. Keep your hips straight, but let your waist rotate. Watching your hand go around. and the hand slowly comes back. Stretching should not be bouncing. Stretching should just be gentle movements. You can hold some stretches, but anytime that you feel pain, don't go there. It should just be a gentle tugging as you look behind your back. This movement is so important because you are going to need to put on your coat. Let's shake our arms out for just a minute and de-stress right there. And our fingers come up. We're going to open and close them now. When you sew, there's a lot of rotary cutting using, so you need to get practice of opening and closing fingers. If you have arthritis, do not make this a tight opening and close. It's just opening and closing. And we're going to wrist circle right on down as we wrist circle through the air. So our hands and our wrist, our fingers do a lot of work in the sewing room. So up come those fingers again, opening and closing, and we're reaching out. Keep a good posture. Let your knees be gently soft there. And we just want to push our palms toward each other. Hold this for just 10 or 20 seconds, but you'll feel a nice stretch in your shoulders and your arms. And remember to keep breathing. I didn't mention that to you. As we reach to the floor with our palms, you feel a nice stretch on top of your hands. Keep breathing as we go through this. Don't hold your breath at all. And then one more time, we're pressing those palms out, feeling it in our shoulders. When you sew, you often feel tension in your neck, your shoulders, your back, your hips. So this is a really good way to relax that tension as we wrist circle right on down. One place we hold tension is in our neck. So let's just put our shoulders back, and we're going to just let our neck relax. Let your neck relax. Right ear toward the right shoulder. Just a little stretch, not too much. Don't cause any pain. We're just letting that neck move because it's been stiff as you sew. Now the left ear toward the left shoulder. Just hold it for just a second and coming right back. Remember to keep breathing deeply, and then out. One thing I learned that's new, I hadn't done before, is you can relax your neck. Let your chin touch your neck. Just relax your head like this. Chin touch your neck, and try to bring your head back slightly with your chin still down. It's a very small movement. So looking straight ahead again, it's just letting your chin come down, touch your neck, and bring that neck back very slowly. Very small movement. So working on that neck. We've got a limited time here today, so let's all put our arms straight out. The backs of our hands are touching, and we're just stretching out. And then let our arms come slowly down. Now, arms coming back up, palms touching each other. What we're going to do with this is we're actually going to clasp our hands. But if you have arthritis in your fingers, I just want you to hold them over each other. Because if you're clasping your fingers, we're going to turn them and press them out. You're going to feel a good stretch in your fingers, a good stretch in your shoulders and your back. Does that make sense? But if you have arthritis, again, it's just a little movement right there. And then open and close them as we go right on down this way. Very good. Let's hold on to our chair now. I want to show you something. A lot of stretching is just to hold good posture, whether you're sitting or standing. I know we're going to talk about that later, but I want you right now just to let your shoulders go and just to pretend you're an amoeba. You have no muscles or bones, so you're just going to look like this. So you're just going to relax everything. And when you do, your tummy's pretty big. Thanksgiving's coming. I want to show you all a good move. What we're going to do is hold our chair, do a couple of deep knee bends, just halfway down, little knee bends. Now, when you're down this time, I want you to push in on your tummy belly button. Push under the gluteus maximus. It's called a pelvic tilt. So push here, push under. Don't fall backwards. Hold that pelvic tilt as you come up. Hold on to your chair. Your knees stay softly. Don't lock your knees or elbows. Your knees are soft, but hold that movement. So again, knees all the way bent. Push in here, push under here, then come up. Sucking in the belly button, pulling in the tummy. And what you'll feel is a nice, gentle stretch in your lower back. Do you all feel it? A really gentle stretch because you've tilted those hips. Feels really good. Now I'm looking at me, and maybe my shoulders aren't where they could be. So I'm going to try to keep that pelvic tilt because I've just lost 10 pounds in my tummy. I'm really happy with Turkey Day coming to lose that 10 pounds. We're going to take our hands and bring them up. And just let them both come out, just very gently. I want you to notice how your shoulders feel. So hands palms to the floor. We're working on shoulder strength and flexibility. palms coming out. Shoulders are pretty neutral right now. So hands are coming back together. As we move, we're going to let our hands come this way, palms up, and slowly bring them to the side. Do you feel a difference in your shoulder? That's the type of movement, that shoulder back, that we should include with that pelvic tilt. It should be like this. Now, one of my favorite things for a stiff neck is to do this. Are y'all ready? We've got some good posture now. Shoulders are back, ears are over our shoulders, ears over shoulders, pelvic tilt, knees gently bent. We're going to do one of my favorite, which is a shrug. Breathing in, we're going to shrug, breathing in. And as we breathe out, go to the back and roll back down. This is simple shoulder shrug. It really helps the lower back and the shoulders. So breathing in. Stash, what stash? Breathing out. Breathing in, up to the shoulders. Oh, you mean the fabric? Oh, shoulders back, coming down. Breathing in again, breathing in. Isn't it wonderful, all that fabric and shoulders back, coming down to the side. And two more before we stop our stretching break today. We want to take our shoulders and do just little shoulder rolls, nice little shoulder rolls. They feel to me like a massage, a free massage they do, because you can feel your muscles rippling across your rib cage. Shoulder rolls feel so good. The shoulder roll to the back. Then I'm going to teach you one parlor trick that you can use when you're doing Thanksgiving or visiting with your small group of families and friends this holiday season. I want everyone to hold on to their chair, bring your foot up, and I want you counterclockwise. You can rotate your ankles, you can rotate your knee, but take your toe and make a big circle counterclockwise. As you do this, take your finger, hold on to the chair real tight. I want you to take your hand and draw a figure 6 in the air. So it looks like this, hold figure 6. Now we're going to put our foot down for just a minute to get our balance. Pull it up, and we're going to go clockwise now. Clockwise with that rotation. If you have heel spurs and that ankle rotation isn't comfortable, let your knees rotate and draw that big circle. Now draw the figure 6 again. What happens? Go backwards. Yes, I can't. Only a couple of people can do this. Let's try with the other foot, see if that works better. I'm flipping over here. We're doing counterclockwise, and we're drawing that figure 6. It's so easy to do because the finger's going counterclockwise, just like the foot. So easy, and we're doing some really good flowing that blood through the juice tubes, working on that calf muscle. Let's put that foot down for just a minute. Think about good posture. Up it comes. Let's do clockwise again, you all. Clockwise. And we're going to do the figure 6. What happens to the foot? It cannot keep it, can it? It goes clockwise again. So this is a fun trick to share with some friends and family. Thank you all for stretching. Final breath, breathing in. And out, breathing in, and out. We're ready to go back to Not Your Mother's Sewing Room. Thank you so much for stretching with us today. Try to take a stretch break every hour, at least every 2 hours. You'll feel a lot better.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. That was fantastic. And I don't know about everybody else, but I was standing up and doing all that with her until there at the very moment we ended. Throughout the day, because this is a long Zoom, we hope that you will take advantage of stretching and doing a little bit of stretching. We're going to go right into a video. I don't know about you guys, but I enjoy looking at all of the new things on the market. And sometimes we really want those new things, and sometimes we just like to watch them or see them and know that we are not necessarily going to buy them, okay? So I'm going to start talking now about cutting. And if you have a sewing room and you do sewing, then you know you're going to be cutting. And we're all probably very familiar with using our rotary cutter, our rulers, and having a mat. You can see she's even using an ergonomic tool there. But we're going to move over and talk about dies now. And there's all kinds of cutting dies and cutting machines. And if you might have a crank one, which has been out forever, but there's also electric cutters. And this is an example of an electric cutter. And you can see that my friend there, she's laying her fabric down on the die. She put the mat on it, and now she's just going to give it a little push, and the machine pulls it through. It's an electric cutting machine. And on the other side of this, the electric cutting machine can cut up to the equivalent of 6 layers of 100% cotton fabric. So it's very nice. She's twisted that, and now she's going to pull it up, and you see that we have cut our little red truck, okay? And she has 2 of them there, and eventually this will turn into an applique pillow, and there you can see the applique pillow. So it's very nice to have cutting equipment in our sewing room, and we're going to end that video because that was just a fun look at that. I will say that here in Garrett County, Lancaster, we have, I have the electric cutter, but I also have the hand crank ones. And I always invite people in if you want to come and spend a day cutting here at the office. You're certainly welcome to do that. I have quite a few dies, and you can even bring your own dies if you want to do that. So now we're going to move on into the latest sewing supplies and watch some and enjoy a couple of our certified master clothing volunteers that are in the Fort Harrod area. And the first one is Ann Hillard, and then we're going to have Candy Sims, and they're going to talk about needles and threads. So we're going to start right now with Ann. So welcome, Ann. There is a poll. Everybody take the poll, please.
Where do I change that?
Just click anywhere.
We see some numbers coming in on the poll, so please take advantage of this opportunity to complete that, guys.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. And I feel all loose and ready to go after Sheila's presentation. So we'll move on. And I want to talk to you today about the most important 2 inches of steel in your machine. Believe it or not, your needle is the most important 2 inches of steel you encounter every time you sew. Selecting the correct needle for your project is just as important as selecting the fabric, the thread, or the stabilizer. For the best sewing results, needles should be replaced every 8 to 10 hours of stitching time. When you start a new project or when the needle becomes bent or damaged, regardless of how simple or sophisticated your machine is, the needle is at the heart of the stitch formation process. Its role is to deliver thread from the top and through the project to the bobbin thread and create a stitch. With the right needle, you will stitch without a glitch, but with the wrong needle, even the best machine can give you fits. Okay.
So just click that anywhere in the middle.
Okay. Well, you can see from this little slide, there's so many different types and so much information on those machine packages of your needles. But sewing machine needles are the most changeable part of your sewing machine, and they influence how your machine forms the stitches. Understanding how the parts of the sewing machine needle work will help you choose the correct needle for your projects. So many choices, how to decide. A good rule of thumb to keep in mind is the lighter the fabric, the smaller the needle size. And the heavier the fabric, the larger the needle size.
Oh.
It's not moving.
Click it again.
Okay. The needle package. When you go shopping for needles, you pick up the package and there's all different kinds and different information on that package. So we have to decipher that information. The home sewing system, a 130/705H, which you'll see right in there, like, well, what's that number mean? Well, that refers to a flat shank, which all home sewing machines, that's the type of needle system that we use. If you use a commercial machine or something, there may be a different system, but when you see that number, you know those are for home sewing machines. You'll also see information referring to the type of needle, the recommended fabric, the type of point, the size of the needle, and more. The size of the needle is given in the European metric size, which is this. Being a fine needle can range anywhere from 60 to 120, which is the thickest needle. The American sizing, which are the lower numbers, they can be any size from 8, which is a fine needle, to 19, which is a heavy needle. Sewing machine needles are standardized. The brands are compatible across the different sewing machine brands. Let's talk a little about the anatomy of the needle. The top of the needle, or the shank, is a part of the needle that goes up into the machine. It has a round side and a flat side. As you go down the needle, you have the shaft. It has a front groove, a scarf, an eye, and a point. When you understand the different types of needles, you can see how having the best needle choice for your project is very important. Look at the different types of needle points. You can see having the best needle choice for your project is very important. The different types of needles can be universal, jersey, ballpoint, stretch, denim, microtex, leather, self-threading, and many other types. Universal needles, as the name suggests, are most commonly used needle. They can be used with woven fabrics, synthetics, and some knits. Ballpoint needles, they have a more rounded tip than a universal needle, which pushes the fabric fibers apart. So when you're sewing on knits, it doesn't damage the fabric. Stretch needles, they are more for if you're sewing on lycra or heavy knits. Jeans needles, those are intended to go through heavy fabric. Sharp needles or the microtex needles. Those are when you're using lots of layers, like with cotton or cotton batting, and you're working on dense woven fabrics such as silks or microfibers. Leather needles, you often have to choose these because the point is really sharp and it pierces through the leather. Quilting needles, when you're working with layers, they're designed to use different layers so that you can get through all of them with a clean stitch. The metafill, the embroidery needles, top stitch needles, and it really goes on and on. When you start investigating or looking in your fabric store or your quilt shops or wherever you get your needle supply or online, you'll see there's lots of different types that will help you have a better project. Another interesting thing about this 2 inches of steel is the needle eye. Look at the thread holes or the eye and the differences in size and shape. This carries the thread when the stitch is formed. During sewing, the needle slides through the eye of the needle several times at a high speed. Another reason to choose the right needle and the right thread. The needle manufacturers have taken a lot of the guesswork out of identifying the needle. In this color-coded chart here, you can see that it helps you identify the type of needle and the size of the needle. So we'll all be curious when we get back to our sewing boxes and look at those needles and say, oh yeah, there's that color, and what does that mean? So that way you can identify what type of needle it is. And as you scan down, you'll notice that these color-coded bars, they help you identify that. And a helpful tip, when you change your needle, put a piece of paper under the foot. Then there's no danger of the old needle dropping inside the machine. Well, our mother's sewing machine needles were pretty standard with few choices. With so many threads and fabric choices today, it stands to reason that we need a specific needle for a specific job. The formation of a stitch hasn't changed from our mother's sewing machine to our modern machines, but we have so many choices today, our mothers would hardly recognize our resources, but they would love it. So whether you are sewing on a machine that has more control functions than a jet airplane, or a basic little machine, your needle choice is important for your success. Remember to choose the right needle for your project. The needle is the least expensive part or notion of your wonderful sewing machine. So change your needle to meet the needs of your fabric and for quality control. And if in doubt about the needle, throw it out. Another little tip, used sewing machine make great picture hangers. And your sergers, don't forget about your sergers and their needles. They can use 1, 2, and sometimes 3 needles at once. Choose wisely to get the top performance from your machine. Nowadays, we have so many other types of machines. We have cover stitch and other specialty machines that also require a good choice for the right needle. Most sewers just want to get a professional looking result. Knowing more about needles brings you closer to the goal. Remember the reasons to change your needle: beginning a new project, function and fabric, how much sewing time have I used that needle, damaged or worn needles, troubleshooting for the best quality stitch. Your sewing machine is only as good as the needle used. I hope you've learned some interesting and helpful points today about the most important 2 inches of steel in your sewing machine, the needle. Thank you all.
Hang on, Ann. I think we have some questions.
I think we were going to do questions with me and Candy at the same
Oh,
time.
okay. So we can switch it.
First, or I just
Yep.
threads are
Well, actually,
mystery these days.
Mhm.
I would like to, this is Mary. I would like to remind people to put their questions in chat. And we're going to move right into our next speaker, who's also a certified master clothing volunteer, Candy Sims. And she's located in Woodford County. And I'm going to say, Candy, take it away.
Okay, Mary, are you ready for some thread tails? We create so many tails with our fabric and thread. Do you know how to select the best thread options for your sewing projects? This information may help you enjoy your sewing more. There we go. Here's the tail of the perfect stitch. We all want a perfect stitch and a perfect result. The machine, the thread, the needle, the fabric, and even the weather contribute to your success. So many moving parts and so many questions to ask. So how do you choose? Consider your fabric. What's the fiber content? Is it natural or synthetic, or a combination of the two? What's the construction? Is it woven? Is it knit? Or is it some strange thing we don't know what it is? What's the weight? Is it lightweight like chiffon, heavyweight like denim, or somewhere in between? What's the project? Is it a costume that will be worn once and tossed, or a Chanel jacket that you will labor over for months and wear for years? An outfit for tomorrow night's dance, or a quilt or christening dress that will be handed down from generation to generation? Then you consider your thread. Are you using good quality thread? What is good quality thread? Is it the appropriate fiber for the fabric? Is it the correct weight for the fabric? Come on, there you go. Thread is a main character in your sewing tail. Higher quality thread requires less special handling. Poor quality thread has more lint and breaks easily. Each type of thread has specific characteristics and will behave differently on sewing machines. Regardless of fiber content, there are specific factors to consider to determine better quality threads. Elongation, how much the thread can stretch without breaking. Uniformity, higher quality thread has fewer knots, slubs, dropped ply, and dropped filament. Ply security. Plies are the strands. If the plies separate during sewing, the thread is more likely to break. Lubricity, slipperiness or smoothness, which reduces friction. And strength, at what point the thread breaks. Threads are made from natural fibers such as cotton, wool, silk, linen, or synthetic fibers. Rayon, polyester, nylon, and others. Some are a combination of natural and synthetic. Since cotton's been around for a long time, let's focus on cotton first. It is still a major player in the thread story. The raw cotton, the white fluffy fibrous ball from the cotton plant, is made of hundreds of thousands of small fibers called staples. There is a direct correlation between the length of a staple and the quality of a thread. Cotton is grown in at least 80 countries in the world. The top 3 are China, India, and the United States in that order. Egypt is way down at number 20. However, Egypt's cotton is really good. The greater the staple length, the smoother and stronger a cotton thread will be. The best cotton is extra long staple, the highest grade. Even though Egyptian cotton is highly praised, only 20% of Egyptian cotton is the top quality extra long staple. The United States has a extra long staple cotton called Supima cotton, which is ranked very close to the top grade Egyptian cotton. What makes it so good in Egypt? Climate, soil conditions, access to water, minerals, and exposure to sunlight all affect the cotton crop. And Egypt's Nile Delta is close to perfect. Quantity of lint is always a factor. Everywhere cotton thread comes into contact with a machine, lint will rub off. Thread twist is measured by numbers of twists applied per meter. A loosely twisted cotton requires less total fiber content, takes less time to produce, and is less expensive to manufacture. It may have as few as 150 twists per meter. Quality Egyptian cotton thread has as many as 1,000 twists per meter, resulting in a smooth, consistent surface. Mercerization is the process of treating cotton thread in a special solution which causes the fiber to swell, improves even coloration when dyed, and makes the thread stronger. The extra long staple factors into the smooth feel and strength. Thread that has been gassed is smoother, has lower lint and a brighter sheen. It has been passed through flame at a high speed to burn off the longest pieces of lint. It is sometimes described as silk finished or polished cotton. So we look at thread construction. Thread construction varies by type and purpose. Traditionally, cotton thread has been the standard, both for the home sewer and in the industry. Continuous filament, which is right here in the middle, is shiny threads made of strands of polyester, rayon, or nylon. Short fibers twisted together produce spun thread. The lengths of the fibers used affect quality, strength, and performance. Regardless of fiber strength, quality, strength, and performance of the resulting thread. Regardless of whether the thread is natural or synthetic, they are made of staple fibers and spun into single yarns, and the single yarns are plied into sewing thread. Spun thread has a fuzzy appearance, a soft hand, and more lubricity or slipperiness than continuous filament thread. However, they are not as strong as continuous filament thread. Then there is core spun thread. It is made of a continuous filament polyester core wrapped with spun cotton or polyester fibers and put through a twisting process that forms the thread. And if you look at Dual Duty Plus from Coats & Clark, it is either a cotton covered polyester or a polyester covered polyester. Which thread is thicker? Thread thickness matters, and thread thickness is related to weight. The larger the weight number, the finer or thinner the thread. In this picture, the cotton number 30 Madeira cotton thread is heaviest and would be appropriate for heavy-duty denim. That color wouldn't quite work, but it'd be heavy. The number 53 Masterpiece cotton thread is 50 weight, 3 ply. It's good for general sewing or piecing. And the recycled polyester number 100 is very fine. When you're looking at thread, remember larger numbers are always finer thread. So how do you know which one to choose? The story continues on the end of the spool. Now, if your mother was like mine, she sewed a lot, and she used spools like the picture on the left. These old wooden spools are still beautiful. Save them, display them in pretty jars, but don't use them for something you want to last. Thread wears out by age, as well as quality. Thread spools provide information. The fiber content, there's rayon and a couple of cottons. The thread size, it's either a number or other ways of showing thread thickness and how much thread is on each spool. This spool has 850 yards and it's 40 weight, which means it is heavier than some of these other ones. Dual duty, this says it's heavy, and this one, whoops, says it's fine. And they have 125 yards on those. Now, thread delivery and the spools suggest the best way the thread needs to be threaded onto the machine just by looking at it. And I just learned this in this, working on this. Most spools are wound with a straight or parallel wind, like these over here, whereas cones and many European spools are cross-wound. On home sewing machines, straight round spools, which is hard to say, perform better with the spool positioned on the vertical spool pin so the thread unwinds straight from the side. If you position the spool on the horizontal pin, the thread unwinds over the end of the spool and puts a twist on the thread as it unwinds. This may cause problems with a sensitive thread such as these shown here. What else is there? There's wool thread, which is often used for embroidery and working by hand. Silk thread, I don't show here, but it is flexible, it won't leave holes. So silk thread is an excellent choice for basting thread. Silk thread is also great to use when sewing silk or wool. Linen thread is much coarser than cotton and is often used to sew reproduction clothing. Variegated threads, I'll show some here, are fun to use for embroidery and quilting and can be found in multiple fiber options, including cotton, polyester, rayon, metallic, silk, and texturized nylon. One source I found called them the Sewist crayons. Bonded thread has a special resin applied to create a tough but smooth protective casing. This is most often applied to nylon and polyester thread with multiple filaments like coarse spun polyester and smooth multi-filament thread. It is often used in automotive and outdoor upholstery sewing. Metallic thread is used to embroider and to sew decorative top stitching. It isn't very strong and it breaks easily, which is why it needs the white glove treatment. So what's some new things? There are threads for every application. Monofilament thread, also known as invisible nylon, is a thread that has a single filament. Monofilament thread is semi-translucent and is the first choice for sewing invisible stitches. Fusible thread is known as the thread that sticks. Stitch, then press to secure layers for accuracy. Made primarily of nylon, its lower temperature melts to fuse the layers together. It is great for matching plaid and stripes at a seam line since it holds the design pattern in place while you sew the seam. It is usually used in the bobbin or lower loopers in a serger. Elastic thread is very fine covered core wrapped with cotton or acetate used for shirring, smocking, and other decorative stitching. Use elastic thread in the bobbin. Water-soluble thread is a terrific product for machine and hand basting instead of pin basting, trapunto, applique, and heirloom sewing. When you finish the project, gently wash it and this thread disappears. Use it both in needle and bobbin. Do not lick the ends to thread a needle as it will dissolve. Textured thread is polyester or nylon that's been mechanically textured to make the thread fuzzy and stretchy and woolly-like. It is a procedure used to increase the volume and elasticity of a filament thread. It's also often known as woolly nylon. Whoops, back up. Oh, there should be one more in there. Oh, we took it out. Never mind. At the end of the day, trust your sewing experience. For successful projects, use the right thread for the right fabric and the right needle for the thread. And there are lots and lots of places to look for thread. Sewingpartsonline.com has great information. Superior Threads, Coats.com, and Threads Magazine has information on the in the magazine and in online articles. That's it for threads.
Okay, hold on, Candy.
Yep, there we go.
Okay, well, thank you, ladies. And I know that we all probably learned something during those two presentations. And I'm going to ask Alethea, she is our chat monitor, one of them. And I'm going to ask Alethea if she would ask any questions that appeared in chat that were about threads currently. Now, I do want to encourage you, don't think that you don't get an opportunity to ask any more questions. Just type your questions into chat throughout the presentations today. So maybe you don't have a question right now about thread, but if you do in an hour from now, feel free to type something in. So Alethea, did we have any questions about thread specifically?
Yes, yeah, we do. So the first question is, what is the best thread for quilting?
I believe cotton thread is best for quilting. 50 weight is great for hand or for piecing, and then quilting a heavier weight. And if you're hand quilting, there's special hand quilting threads, which are a heavier weight thread.
The next question is, do you have any information on Coats EloFlex stretch thread?
Not specifically, but I would suggest that you get online, go to Coats.com, which is the company that actually manufactures this thread, and you will come back with more information than you can ever use.
All right. I think that's all the ones for thread. We do have a few for needles.
Okay, well, let's give Anne a chance to switch out with Candy there, and we do appreciate everybody's good questions. I think that you may not have a question yourself, but it always helps when you hear somebody else's question. So,
And Mary, this is Rita. I will say that we are sharing our results of the last poll, so you all can see that on your screen too.
yes, that's very interesting. Which thread story best describes you? And I love that last answer. I have lots of different kinds of threads, but rarely beyond the basics. And I think I would have had to have marked that one myself, because I seem to have a lot of different things in my sewing box, but I rarely have the time to play around and use some of those. So that was very interesting. I hope you all are enjoying our poll questions. Please keep on answering them, and we have several more before the day is over. So is Anne ready to, Alethea, did we have any questions about needles?
Yes, we have 3 questions about needles. The first question is, what is the most common size needle used?
Generally, from all the research I did, and I know I do this myself, the 80-12. And that's generally kind of somewhere in the middle for basic sewing. That's generally the most common one used. And that is available in different types, even in your jeans needles or your universal needles or quilting needles of that size would be in, you know, each type of needle usually.
All right. Let's see. The other question was about the picture slide with the needle colors. They were wondering if we would get a copy of that picture.
Actually, I think you are going to receive that as a download where you'll get that information. So you'll have a little chart to keep in your possession of all your special information.
Cool. And could you repeat the method of placing a spool of thread on, and the half of the question is gone.
I didn't do that one.
Yeah, I think that's.
I'll let Candy address that for you.
It's real simple if you're using, huh?
The thread.
Oh, okay. We can use.
You need to repeat the question.
I think I know what it is, but this spool, which is a Coates and Clark spool, is a straight line. And that should be, when you use this, put it on the vertical pin because it needs to wind off the side. This one is a cross wound and it works either way, whether it's up and down or horizontal. So it's only the straight wound that makes a difference. Does that help?
Thank you. Okay, lots of questions pouring in now.
Okay, great.
Is there any advice out there to help thread a needle once it's in the machine?
I had bad eyes.
I have that trouble too because my left eye is not working well anymore. So sometimes if you get those little teeth flossers and you can use them, or you know, we have those little, what do you call them? They're wires with a little metal thing on the side that you would normally use with hand sewing.
Needle threaders.
That's it. Thank you. That's a big name for it. You can actually put it in from the back to the front, put your thread on it and pull it back out. And it will work, but needle threading is the most difficult thing I think we do. Or you could do like that and get the.
With me, be careful.
Okay, let's move on. Alethea, what was the next question?
How often should you change your needle?
That's a very good question, and Anne has a wonderful answer.
Well, I did have some tips. I probably went through them a little fast, but you should change your needle. Generally, if you want good best results before you start a new project, if you've been sewing on it for 8 to 10 hours, it's probably worn enough, and needles are relatively inexpensive if you look at a package and it's $6 to $10, but that's really less than $1 a piece. Well, if that makes your project go smooth, it's well worth that much money to put a new needle in the machine. Of course, if you have a jam or you need to check for the needle to be bent or something like that, you know, and if your machine starts making like a thumping noise or something, that's a pretty good telltale sign that it's time to change that needle. If you're working with a different material, if you change to jeans or leather or cork or some other, or quilting or something that's a different thickness than just putting two pieces of cotton together, generally you want to look into your stash of specialized needles because they definitely will make a difference on how your stitching turns out. A little tip I had for threading a needle, and I learned this a long time ago in some class I was in, if you'll put just a little piece of white paper or something behind that needle, all of a sudden it highlights that hole and it gives you a lot more opportunity to put that thread through that hole on the sewing machine.
Okay, well, thank you, Anne. I know that changing our needle or checking our needle when you're having problems with your stitches and they don't look exactly nice or they skip, sometimes it is as simple as changing the needle because we all get in that habit of just sitting down and sewing, and sometimes we forget, oh yeah, I've had that needle in there a long time. So we appreciate that. Any more questions, Alethea?
Yes, we have 2 more questions, and I think that'll be it. What does it mean when the bobbin stitches are not spaced evenly?
Answer that, but it's the needle, the thread, or it's the needle, the thread, or you need to take everything out and rethread everything.
Yeah.
Sometimes the bobbin is, if you have a bobbin that sits on top, it's one way. If you have the bobbin that comes in underneath, it is possibly threaded backwards. Make sure your bobbin always makes a U-turn before it goes out of the bobbin case.
Now, anytime you see just, you know, a problem with the stitching where it looks like it's pulling up wrong or the stitches are not even or it's skipping a stitch, first rule of thumb is just pull everything out and rethread, reset the bobbin. And 9 times out of 10, when the next time you sew, it's okay. Now, you know, if you've got another problem going on, then that may require additional work to get it fixed. But most of the time, if you can just undo and reset, sometimes you even maybe need to turn your machine off and turn it back on and let it recalibrate or whatever. Sometimes that makes a difference on, especially on bobbins and things like that, because these machines, especially if you have a electronic machine, they're all set to do a certain thing. And if they've had a little glitch somewhere, sometimes just turn it off, rethread everything and set it back up, and then you're good to go again.
Okay, well, thank you for asking so many questions. And if there are still questions in the chat, I'm going to let Ann and Candy look at those questions and perhaps type the answers in the chat. We will have more time at the end of our Zoom this morning, but we need to move on. And right now, Lucy is going to pull up a video. And this video is going to show us, I don't know about you guys, but I actually know people that do not have an iron. And you may have people in your life that don't have an iron. But I had the joy of going down to Quilter's Chunk and seeing a couple of new versions of irons. And I don't know if anybody has one of those, but that was a coal. You put the hot coals in the old iron, and that's how it heated up. This iron is very nice, the yellow one that you see there. When you are pressing, you press and do your ironing. And then when you are finished and you take your hand off of the iron, watch what happens. It raises up, and that way you don't ever burn your fabric. This is another example of what's out there on the market, and this is a cordless iron. And you can see it has a retractable cord there. You hit a button and it pulls back in. It heats up on its base, and then you iron with it, press with it. And you can also see that you can iron either direction with this little iron. It heats up just as hot as any iron. It's got some weight to it as well. Then you put it, if it loses its heat, you put it back on its base, okay? While it's warming up again or recharging, you can take out the water container actually and go fill it up before you put it back in. And then you can see that it has its own little carry case. So that makes it very nice for going to a class. The carrying case was very nice. There's different brands of irons out there. I don't know about you guys, but I sometimes forget to look at all the different irons only when I need one for, whether mine has broken down or stopped working, or I don't think it's putting out enough heat or whatever. But there's a lot of iron choices on the market. So if you need a new iron, I suggest that you get out there and look for it. And I don't even understand those people that don't have an iron in their life. Okay, so we're going to move on at this point. And our next presenter is Jeannie Badgett. And Jeannie is a senior specialist at UK for our textiles. And I have her title here. Textiles, she's our senior extension associate for clothing, textiles, and household equipment. We don't, usually talk to our friends with their whole titles, so I had to look. But I want to welcome Jeannie now, and we're going to move on and talk about storage, okay? And I think we have one poll question for that as well. So I'll let you all put up the poll question, and we'll have Jeannie take over.
Make sure you guys answer the poll question.
Great, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to talk about this portion, all about organizing your space. Organizing is kind of a passion of mine, so I just love to talk about it. I guess, can we do the, go ahead and put the PowerPoint on. Okay, great. Okay, so I just want to start off here. I'm curious if any of these things sound familiar to you. These are some quotes I've found. Sewing fills my days, not to mention my living room, bedroom, and closets. No, my sewing room is not messy. I just have everything out on display, like a museum. Or we could say that sewing, it's the art of searching for items you just had 2 seconds ago. And you never know what you have until you clean out your craft room. So if these things sound familiar to you, I think you'll enjoy the next few minutes as I talk about organizing your craft space. As I thought about ways to approach this topic, I realized that we're all coming from different situations. Some of you who are watching have been sewing for years and years and years, and you have your sewing room or your sewing rooms, sewing spaces already organized and everything's perfect. Some of you may have a little corner of your laundry room that you have dedicated for sewing and crafts. And some of you might have part of a guest room for all of this stuff that you have for sewing and crafts. And some of you may feel overwhelmed by it because there is a lot of stuff that goes along with these hobbies and crafts, such as sewing. As we heard from Candy and Ann, we've got all the needles and threads. We have to think about how do we organize all that stuff and how do we keep track of it. So I just want you guys to be aware that I realize that we are all coming from different places here. So I hope that my presentation, let's see, there we go, will actually, let me go back here. Yeah. I hope my presentation will resonate with everyone. So basically what I'm going to talk about is briefly discuss the relationships between messes and clutter and disorganization and productivity. And then I'm going to talk about taking ownership of your space, because that's part of it, is realizing that, hey, if something is unorganized, the only way it's going to get organized is if you do something about it. And I want to talk about the difference between clutter and just a mess, and define organizing, because so many people say, oh, I want to organize this, but there's really, in my view, a better way to do it than some people try to do this. And then I want to talk about steps to achieving that functioning space or tidy space. And also I will show you some pictures of ideas for products and storage organization. So just briefly to touch on this, research has shown that there are links between messy spaces and the way you feel, physically and mentally. So it truly is a thing, a legitimate thing. If you feel overwhelmed or depressed or just not motivated, you don't know where to start, sometimes people don't realize that it's their environment that's impacting them. So it is a true thing. So give yourself some credit that sometimes the way you feel is linked to your surroundings. Now, one study did show, or actually I'm sure there's been several studies to show this, but one study in particular did show that there was a relationship between neat environments and good behavior. And basically what that was basically saying in this particular study is participants who had neat environments, everything was running smoothly in their world, so to speak, they were more inclined to eat better, to exercise, make better choices. But also, this particular study did say that sometimes messy environments do help with creativity. So I'm just going to give you all a little bit of, throw you a bone there. So if there are some of you that do have messy spaces and you may be thinking, well, hey, I can't function in a neat environment. I don't get inspired if everything is put away. So that's okay. We'll do what works for you. So I want to talk about embracing your space. In this particular webinar, we're talking about, it's not your mother's sewing room, right? So it's not your mother's sewing room, right? Whose sewing room is it, or whose craft space is it? It's yours. I mean, you may share it, or you may have like I said, a teeny corner in a room, but just know that it's your space. So it's up to you to make changes if you want to make changes. It's up to you just to embrace it and make the best of it. So part of my feeling about organizing and decluttering, it's really sometimes just the way you think about things and process things. So you might just have to shift in your thinking about how to move forward. And this would apply to those of you that are really struggling in a messy sewing or craft environment. So you want to set goals, but know that it is okay if your sewing or craft space doesn't look like it's on the cover of a magazine. And that's why for this presentation, I'm not going to show you Pinterest perfect photos of the perfect craft room where everything is put away neatly, because yes, many people do have that, but I would hazard a guess that more people don't have that kind of magazine cover quality sewing space, and that is okay. So I'm really just going to focus on the hows and whys of messes and clutter and how you can organize this space, and really any space in your home. So what I want to talk about is the difference between clutter and a mess. So as you look around your sewing space, and if things aren't perfect for you, if you get bothered by, what is all this stuff? Some of it might just be clutter. Clutter can be defined as something that it doesn't have a space, it doesn't have a place, it doesn't have a home, it doesn't belong there, it's out of place. That's why it's sticking out to you, and it might be getting in the way of you accessing other things. What I like to think about, for example, everybody has house keys or car keys. You probably keep those in a home, in a designated spot. Because if you just kept your keys in a random spot on the counter, it might look out of place like clutter, but you put it in a home and it's not clutter anymore. Whereas a mess might just be, let's say after you make a big meal and the kitchen is a mess because all these things are just strewn about the counter. But after you clean up and do the dishes and put these things away, you can clean up the mess because these things have a home, they have a place to go. So I wanted you all to be aware that there's kind of a difference. I heard this somewhere that a researcher referred to clutter or messes. It's kind of like a silent indictment towards you. And this is where we get into maybe how clutter or messes affect our mental health. Because when stuff is everywhere and out of place, you might be thinking like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. I've got to deal with all these things, these unfinished projects, or as we sometimes call the UFOs, or unfinished objects. And then also it's like a visual to-do list. And you might think, why is all this stuff out? Am I just too lazy to put it away? Probably not. It might just be that you don't have the skills or the right frame of mind to figure out what to do with the stuff. So we want to think about, where do we start? What do we do to go from a space that just looks messy and might impact you in a negative way, to go from that to a space that is pleasing and lifts your spirits and makes you want to be in that space and create. So how do we do that? First, I would say, you want to think about what's your goal here. If we want to talk about organizing creative spaces, what is the goal? When we organize, what are we trying to do? I like to say we're trying to remove physical and mental barriers that cause clutter, messes, disorganization, and frustration. By physical barriers, it could just be a box that's in the way, or a dress form that you have to walk around every time because it's in a bad spot. So that's a physical barrier. We just have to move those things. And also mental barriers might be like, oh, I want to go through my thread, but if I go through my thread, I'm going to come across old thread that I know I shouldn't use. And what do I do with it? I feel bad for throwing it away. So that might be a mental barrier to actually tackling this project. So that's what we want to think about. What's the goal here with organizing our craft spaces and sewing spaces? Okay, so this is where I get into what does it really mean to organize? In a nutshell, organizing is when you make things easy to find and put away. That's organizing. You know, things are organized when you can look and say, oh, there's that, there's that, there's that. And when you're done with it, you can just put it away. It's so easy. That's organization, wouldn't you say? Also, when we organize, typically we might want to increase the visibility and accessibility of items. Sometimes we might feel unorganized or disorganized because we can't find anything, because we can't see it. So we want to make sure we can see it, or at least have a plan of where it might be, and then actually be able to get to it without having to move a million things in order to get to what you want, because that's part of that physical barrier. This is a list of just 6 steps. This is how you do it right here. And we do have, this is on the handout that you've got. But basically what you want to do is just assess your situation. What's working, what's not working. Then pick an item that you want to sort, like your thread. Gather it, put all the like items together, and then we'll declutter, we'll assign zones, get some organizing products, and put stuff back. So I'll go into that briefly here. When you're assessing, just think what's working and what's not working. Is stuff easy to put away? Is it not easy to put away? And then when we gather and sort, we want to try to get all the like items together. So if you were going to go through all your patterns, for example, it's good to get all your patterns together instead of organizing some here, organizing some there, because then you don't get the big picture and see if you've got duplicates, which then brings me to decluttering here. So you definitely want to avoid the temptation to buy all these organizers and fancy bins before you actually declutter, because you may, when you declutter or let go of some things, you might have less stuff to store. So, and you're probably thinking here, is Jeannie asking me to get rid of my fabric stash? Not necessarily, but as you're going through your creative space here, think about what can you let go of? Is there anything you can get rid of? Stuff that you haven't used in the past? Does it have a specific use? Is it something that can be replaced? Would it cost a lot to replace it? I know with sewing, it's a little touchy because we want to have the perfect fabric for the perfect project. But I'm just going to put this out there. Does the person with the most fabric at the end really win? Think about that, because who really is dealing with the fabric? Now, it's just something to think about, but everybody's different, and I'm not saying get rid of your stuff. You can give yourself grace, but just keep that in mind, okay? Okay, so stuff, if you decide you want to let some things go, if your fabric or any notions, if they're degraded, elastic is going to degrade after time. It's not going to have stretch. Stuff that's mildewed or moth-eaten, you really just have to let it go, okay? And it's going to be okay. A lot of the stuff, though, that's still in good shape, you can donate. Check your extension agents. They may be able to take it, or different sewing clubs, quilting clubs. There's all sorts of places that will take your fabric and notions that you don't want. You might be able to sell some stuff, like if you have a serger or some equipment or dress form that you don't want, but just keep in mind that something's only worth what someone's going to pay for it. So you have to let something go for $10 that you were expecting to get $100 for. Don't be sad about that. After you've gotten rid of what you don't want, you're ready to think about these zones of where you want to store your stuff. Think about putting like things together, storing them where they're used, so that way they're easy to get to. and easy to find. And just a quick note about what I call landing zones or hotspots. I'll use that in reference to like the car keys. So with sewing, you know, if you're always going to have your scissors handy, have a place for things that you use often, and have a container so that makes it look like it belongs. Give it some intentionality, and it will look less like clutter. Now, briefly, we'll go into organizing projects, and I know I'm going over on our time, but I would hazard a guess that if I said to you, "That's it, I'm out of time, can't talk anymore," we might get some people say, "Oh, please keep going." So I'm going to try to go super fast here. But with organizing products that you get, I would suggest just go for products, you know, bins, boxes, baskets that are uniform in size or shape. They're compatible with each other, meaning you can stack them together. They're versatile. They can be used for all sorts of things. They can be used to store fabric. They can be used to store notions. They can be used to store, you know, lots of batting or interfacing. And you just want to make sure these products that you get for organizing, they help and not hinder. So make sure they work with you. And I like to say this, to see or not to see when you're thinking about getting organizers. Do you want bins and boxes that you can see through, or ones that you don't want to see through? You might want a combination. I prefer bins that I can see through so I know what's in there at a glance. And that's where I like to have uniform bins so they all look the same. If you use bins or boxes that are opaque and you can't see through them, that's fine. But just remember, out of sight, out of mind, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. But if you do have, let's say you've got all these boxes that you've collected over the years, or even if you're using printer boxes or you know, old cardboard boxes, that's fine. If you want to kind of spruce them up and make them look more uniform, put labels on them that all match, and that'll make your space look nicer. So here, the main theme I want you to see here is what these people have done is not only are they sorting by color or fabric type, most of these are for quilters, but you can see they can see what they've got at a glance. Okay, so this is where you can start getting inspired, like, oh, I wish I could have my space look like that. Other ideas for storing fabric could be on the left, there's a shoe hanger or actually sweater hangers that hang on a closet pole. You can store fabric that way. Or in the middle, there's fabric stored on pant hangers. On the right, we have rolled up fabric in an over-the-door shoe rack. So these are all different ideas that we've got now that maybe years ago, there really wasn't all that stuff years ago. And if you keep in mind for folding fabric, you can make a template, your own template. So that way when you fold your fabric, it's going to fit into your container. This is something, you know, nowadays we have to think, well, we can use our wall space and get creative and just make things easy to find and accessible. So those are some ideas. And then I love this, the magazine rack, magazine bin for your rulers and that sort of thing. They're just different ways to think about how to store these projects. Patterns. If you print patterns, you can put in magazine holders. On the right, we've got patterns that will fit into boxes for comic books, actually. So just think about containers that are used for other purposes. And if you've got projects that you're working on, you want to keep them together, like for quilting, you can have a drawer for each project. So that way you've got all the pieces together. And this is where I talk about intentionality. You have a decorative dish or bowl where you can put all of your buttons or things just so it looks nicer and you can see it and it looks like it belongs. There's all sorts of new products out there that might not have been out there back when your mom was sewing. So and then here, this is one of those things. Yes, there are particular products out there that are made now for just a craft space, and sewing tables that we'll see here in just a moment that are made now to make your crafting and sewing easier. So I would say start small and pick one item to organize. And you can always reach out to a local organization and say, hey, will you take fabric? I've got some coming your way. And then you'll maybe go through with that, with that project. So now I know I have gone, no, we can stop the sharing. I've gone over on time, but if I'll take like maybe 30 seconds here. And if you could just, Elizabeth, just show what we've got. So I just want you to see something here. So these cigar boxes, okay, this is what my mom used. So this is from my mother's sewing room, how she used to organize her thread. But what I really like are just clear containers and things that will work for all sorts of purposes. So if you want more information, you can give me a call or email me. My information's on the back of the handout. So thank you so much for your time. And if anybody has any questions, I will be happy to answer those, or you can put them in the chat and I can answer them later, because I know I've gone over. So
I like how you've gone over.
Yeah, well, you know what, Mary? I tried to not go over, but it's just like I can't do it. I can't do it in less than 15 minutes.
I know. And of course, we all love seeing pictures of other people's storage and knowing how other people do it. So we do appreciate you gathering all that information. I will refer people to the lovely handout that you created for us. And it's got a lot of info and a very short amount of space there. So I encourage people to check that out. And we do appreciate you creating that for us, Jeannie. I'm sure we'll see Jeannie in the future at other programs. So we do appreciate it. There have been a couple of questions in chat, but I think some of them can be privately answered by you in a positive way. So we'll let you take care of that if you don't mind. Sure. I do, at this point, I want to acknowledge that one of our visitors today is Jenny Kokenauer. She is our district director here in the Fort Harrod area, along with Bluegrass. She's the district director. And so we want to acknowledge that she has checked in today, and we hope that she's enjoying this about sewing. I don't really know her sewing skills and how involved she is with that. So I'll let her tell us that at next staff or something. But we do want to acknowledge her. And now we're going to look at a video that was on a storage cabinet that kind of goes along with what Jeannie has been talking about. And this is a new cabinet. Some of you may have sewing tables. If you look at this table, this is it sort of all closed up. You actually can't close it up more than that. The arms have been left out just for our purposes here of ease. But you can see that there's a comfy chair as well. And now the table part has been folded out, so you have a big surface to do your cutting and so forth. And I will say that this table has adjustable heights. Well, you can get it in different heights, okay? So you can see where the sewing machine is there. It's completely open at this point, and there's storage for thread that you can pull out, which was very nice. And then on the other side is some drawers for storage. And see the sewing machine rising up out of the depths there. I was standing off to the side, and there's a remote control. So you can do all that by remote and have your sewing machine raise up and get ready to sew. So that's a nice sewing table. And we do appreciate, again, Quilter's Trunk letting me film that and show you that. We're going to move on into our next speaker, okay? And our next speaker is Natalie Jones, and she's also one of our extension associates at UK, and we do appreciate her joining us today. And it's all about ergonomics, and there's a lot of products out there and different tools as well as equipment that help us with ergonomics and taking care of our posture and our health in our sewing room. And so right now I'm going to turn it over to, and there's a poll question, so make sure you answer that. I'm going to turn it over to Natalie Jones.
And can you make me a co-host so I can share my PowerPoint?
We sure can. our Zoom wizard. We have a Zoom wizard today. She's going to let you share.
Perfect. Beautiful.
Oh, look at that question.
Make sure you're answering the poll question, guys.
Just want to check. I feel like this is the 2020 question. Can everyone hear me and see my screen okay? Is that? We're good. Okay. So so thank you so much for having me. My name is Natalie Jones, and I'm the Family Health Specialist with Cooperative Extension. And I'm excited to talk to you guys about ergonomics. And my topic that I want to talk about is basically sewing smart and sewing safe, right? Sewing, cutting, and ironing, and all these different postures that can really tax your body and lead to fatigue and muscle pain, maybe chronic or even serious conditions with the spine. I'm sure some of you guys have felt that as you've been sewing. And just as you measure and adjust a pattern, right, to make a garment fit perfectly, I want to emphasize that you should also measure and adjust to find the proper heights of your sewing tables, your cutting tables, your ironing board, and for your chair as well. So we are going to go over today how you can sew smart, how you can sew safe by using ergonomics to avoid those sore wrists, that neck, back, and shoulders. So that's what we're going to go over today. And I want to give a quick background on what ergonomics is. And overall, ergonomics is the study of people's efficiency in their working environment, or the study of people in their environment. And so you want to design or modify the environment to fit you, right? To fit the worker, not the other way around. So we shouldn't have to hunch over to fit our environment. We want to make the environment work for us. So the goal is ultimately to eliminate discomfort and risk of injury due to whatever work you're doing. So in this point, sewing, quilting, whatever arts and crafts activity you're doing, anything like that. So ergonomics comes from the Greek words ergon, which means work, and nomos, which means laws. So the laws of work, the science of work. And again, it really puts people first. So it's putting us first to make sure that the tasks, the equipment, everything that is in the environment is fitting you personally. And everyone is different. Every body is different, literally. So you should really be working on designing and arranging things in your room that you interact with regularly to make it the most efficient and safe as possible. So in order to sew smart and to be safe, you have to have a safe setup. So some hazards, right? If you're sewing a lot, doing these activities a lot, you often might maintain that awkward shoulder or elbow position, maybe even wrist postures while sewing because of improper chair height or an improper position that doesn't fit you well. You might be standing a lot or maybe sitting for long periods, right, in the same position, which then can result in soreness of your back, knee, maybe your buttocks as well, and reduced circulations in the legs. So really what we're going to go over and talk about are possible solutions that you can focus on, whether that be your chair, the height of your sewing table or cabinet, cutting tables, ironing boards. And I'm only going to emphasize this really in the beginning, but it should be known throughout that you should always have proper lighting just to help with eye fatigue as well. So that way you don't have to bend over and hunch over to see it. So proper lighting is really important as well. Again, the whole environment should be centered around you so that you fit it perfectly. So to start, we're going to talk about the correct chair. So when you're sitting, a good chair is a must, right? And there is no chair that fits everyone's because all bodies are different. So personal preference here, the size of your body will determine exactly what type of chair will work for you. But there are some features that you should look for when you are getting a proper chair. And so seat lift is one that's important. And this enables the seat height to be adjusted to accommodate the length of your legs. So a good chair will have a warranty on this. And so that way, if it breaks down, then you can get it fixed as well. So you want to be able to adjust the height. You also want some padded, articulating, and a waterfall seat. So articulating means that the seat can be tilted to be level or slant down in front. And a waterfall seat is that, the curve, right, in it in terms of the front edge so that it fits behind your knees. And so that way it reduces the pressure on your back because of the legs, which then can improve your circulation instead of impeding circulation. So you always want to be able to test drive it out, right? So sit in a chair before you purchase it to make sure that it fits your body, and to see if the chair seat is too deep or in the front or in the back for you, and if it will, again, cut off the circulation for your legs. And if it's too shallow, then it won't be able to provide enough support. So you really want to focus on the support. Also, adjustable and armrests are important, especially while we're doing these activities, right? You want to have armrests that can support the weight of the arms, or again, you want to have armrests that can get out of the way depending on what type of project you are working on. And so if they aren't adjustable, then it doesn't work for you in terms of the armrests, the height of it, then that chair doesn't fit for you. So make sure that you're looking at the armrests as well. And then lumbar support is really important, because a good chair will have an adjustable back with that lumbar curve, and the chair's back should raise and lower as well. So that way you can fit the perfect curve of your back, because again, everyone is different. So to summarize, right, your chair should be easily adjustable for your height. It should have a seat tilt and a backrest position that moves as well. Hopefully it's a padded backrest that has that rounded edge to support your lower back. Ideally, you don't want to have wheels, but I understand that a lot of chairs do have wheels on them. And so you want to see if they can lock in place, so that way it just helps make the chair as sturdy as possible. You might even want a waterfall right in front edge to help prevent the chair's edge from pressing into the back of your legs. And then that cushion seat, you would just want to make sure that you feel comfortable and that everything works for you. So choose that proper chair for you. Again, everyone is different. Consider the amount of movement you're doing, the task that you're doing, and what type of space you have that would require that chair. Some chairs are really big and may take up too much space in your area. Some may fit perfectly. So we want to go over adjusting your seat, right? We've talked about this before, adjusting your seat, making sure it's perfect, but you wouldn't get into a car or your partner's car or someone else's car if you're driving without adjusting the seat, right? So you always adjust the seat when you get into a car that's not yours. So when you get into a car, you even might take time, right, to check the mirrors, hopefully, and you're adjusting the seat to make it perfect to you. So I want to emphasize how important that is to do the same thing every time you get into your sewing chair, right? So when you sit down to sew, take a minute, sit all the way back in the chair with your back pushed against the back of the chair. Position your legs out in front of you. Make sure you're at a comfortable angle, your feet touching the floor, feet flat on the floor, and check your arms at that 90-degree angle to your machine's feet. So chair height is correct when the work surface is at that elbow height. Ideally in this position, again, entire foot is on the floor. Chair should be placed at an appropriate distance from your workstation, so that way you can perform those tasks without pulling your elbows away from the body. So you shouldn't be having to reach out in front of you. It should just be right in comfortable position. And again, you're depending on what your project you're doing, but like your motor placement shouldn't interfere with proper chair distance, and the seat, depending again on what you're doing, might need to be slightly lower if you're using a pedal. So just keep everything in mind when you're adjusting your seat for what you want. So back against the chair, shoulders relaxed, elbows at that 90-degree, forearms are level with your table, seat angle around that 90 to 100 degrees. And then 2 to 3 finger gap between your knees and your chair. Again, we want that waterfall seat so that way we're not cutting off circulation to our legs. Your knees should be in that 90-degree to 110, feet flat on the floor. So make sure that you have this proper seat adjustment every time that you're going into a different project. And again, depending on what you're doing, it might be a little different. So keep that in mind as well. And then I just want to show these 2 pictures because this is important when you think about which posture is best, right, to work ergonomically at a sewing table. And so a lot of times it's easy to be like that option A and have a little hunched over, but it's important to remember to check and then reassess, right? So scoot your chair in, making sure that our back is against the back of the chair and that we are not hunched over. We don't have that round in our spine. Our shoulders aren't tilted forward. And then we aren't having that extra pressure on our neck as well. So really important here that probably all of us look like option A or B throughout the day at your stations. And so just make sure that if you are noticing that you're being like option A, just to reassess and try to be like option B. And I just want to cut out the benefits of improving your posture and paying attention to your body: less back and neck pain, fewer headaches, improved breathing, reduced body tension, increased core strength, and decreased wearing of joints. So these are all positive things that we are looking for, and it can all just be adjusted with awareness and our improved body posture. So all of that is perfect. And then when we move forward, right, with cutting table height, so if you aren't seated and you're standing, that's okay, right? But we also know that stooping over a table with a cutter is a sure way, right, to end with aching shoulders, a tired low back, stiff neck because of improper table height. So you might even be resting your forearms or wrists on sharp edges of the table, and that may cut off blood circulation, which could lead to pinched nerves and may cause injury in your arms and hands as well. So we want to make sure that our tables are adjusted so that the work is at our elbow height and wrists are kept straight. If the table is too low, you might also have to hunch forward, putting strain on the back. If the table is too high, you may have to raise your shoulders to get your arms high enough to be able to do the work. So we really want to make sure that when we are working at a table, that we are standing with our elbows bent in right angles, and so that way our arms are comfortably in that 90-degree position to be able to do the work. So this is the height of your cutting board, and that we should be focusing on. Again, this will prevent us maybe banging our elbows on the table, and you may want to vary that height a bit, again, depending on the type of work that you're doing, but it shouldn't be much lower than right below that 90-degree angle in your elbow. And I do want to touch on, for sit-down work, again, the table also should be high enough to allow room underneath your legs, right? The table should not press onto your thighs. And depending on the project, you might need a little bit more room for your legs, but the table shouldn't be on your body, and that you should be able to sit with your arms at that 90-degree angle to do the work. So we don't want to be reaching our hands up or slipping down to do it as well. So some tips and tricks here, because if we're using a cutting table, again, we don't want that cutting table or ironing table even to be too high. And so here are some just quick tips, right, is to use bed risers to raise the height of your table. You can even add PVC piping and slipping underneath folding tables legs. And so that can help increase the height as well. Let's see, yeah. And you might even want to really invest in a anti-fatigue mat. And these are amazing. They really help when we're standing for long periods of time. They help with proper posture. They help us not slouch, as well as they just are the best for really being able even to ground your feet and use your feet to be standing and to distribute the weight throughout your feet as well, to have that support for your legs and your spine. They can even help engage your core while you're working. And so plus there. And overall, they really help with muscle fatigue if you're going to be standing for long periods of time. They promote better circulation for the lower extremities of your body, which is really important as well. Also, when you are standing and cutting and using a table, I just want to emphasize that when you're cutting, you want to focus on the tools that you are using as well. So dual blades, they require more force from our fingers and our wrists. And so that can lead to accidents, maybe even repetitive strain injuries to your wrists. So you want to be sure to change your blades often to reduce that injury. I will say I think it was 2 weeks ago, I should listen to my own advice. I cut myself with a pair of scissors because they were not sharp enough and I was having to work too hard and was not paying attention to where my hands were. So really important with ergonomics as well, and for reducing injuries, to change your blades when you're doing different projects. So we'll talk about standing as well in terms of ironing. And so we want to make sure that the board, again, is not too high or too low to strain our wrists and our shoulders. And quilters may spend a lot of time, right, pressing seams, so that you have to plan ahead on what your ironing station looks like. So you want to make sure that you have the correct height. Your ironing surface should be at hip level or just below. Again, the spot where your elbow sits at that 90-degree angle while ironing that's the comfort zone. That's where we want to be at. And you want to measure your hand on the iron, not with your hand on the board surface. So here you can see on the slide an example, right? We have two great models here. And so you want to bend and extend your arm at that 90-degree angle, measure from your elbow to the floor, subtract the iron depth, and find your perfect height. So here's just an example that I put up on the PowerPoint is if you're 5'3", then let's say from the bent elbow to the floor is 39 inches. Your iron height is 6 inches. So you're going to subtract 6 from 39. And so the best ergonomic position that your ironing board can be in is 33 inches high. So check your setup, right? When you go home or when you are home, when you are next going into your room or to your place where your station is set up, check your setup, right? Do you have it right? The standard size of an ironing board, again, it's adjustable and it usually ranges from 27 to 39 inches. And so that should fit for everybody. So just make sure that that table is correct. Or again, if you're using just a normal table as your ironing standing place, then make sure that the proper height as well. Use bed risers, PVC pipes, or get creative. You can use cement blocks, whatever you have handy to raise it or to lower it to fit. So again, ironing guidelines for seated, very similar to what we've been talking about, right? Elbows at that 90-degree, that's going to be our comfort zone. That's where we want. Feet flat on the floor, and no slouching, right? Reminding ourselves to relax those shoulders down, being in that proper position with our back onto the chair. And I just want to say, like, you want to think about it, because if you have a big stack of blocks to press while you're working on a project, have a seat, right? You're going to be there for a while. So whether you have a stool that works for you for your regular height at an ironing board, or you can drop the board down to use a chair, the basic guidelines still apply for that workstation. So again, seated, pain-free, pressing height, elbows at 90-degree, and make sure that you're sitting in a proper position. To continue sewing smart and sewing safe, I also want to emphasize taking a break. So schedule frequent short breaks to stretch or even to change positions. And I would just want to emphasize this because breaks are so important at helping reduce injuries, whether it's eye strain or body posture and alignment as well. So one of my favorites, because we can strain our eyes from focusing on handiwork, whether it be embroidery or quilting or knitting, and then on top of that, everything that we're doing with 2020 in terms of computer screens, smartphones, and TVs can put a lot of strain on our eyes. So we want to make sure that we reduce our eye fatigue and give our eyes a break. So use the 20-20 rule here. And so every 20 minutes, take a 20-second break and focus on something 20 feet away. So this is another good reason why you maybe set up your sewing room. You have a window so you can look out. But I also want to say during that 20-minute, every 20 minutes, readjust, right? Reassess, drop those shoulders, make sure that we're sitting properly, and figure out if you need to change. Maybe you've been seated for a long time. Stand, alternate, and really adjust based on that process. The last thing that I want to talk about as well is the sewing squeeze, right? During those 20 minutes, maybe you want to take a little break because we're often leaning forward, we're hunched over, right? Neck and shoulders, which can lead to poor posture. And so we want to improve that by strengthening our back and strengthening our chest muscles as well. So this is one of my favorites. I do this a lot, even just on my computer during the workday, is just extending your arms out, bending at the elbow so your palms are up, and squeezing your shoulder blades together. Hold it for 5 seconds and then relax it. And then squeeze those shoulder blades together. And you can just repeat that 5 times, maybe it's just a few times, or even just rolling those shoulders out to reset. So really emphasizing again that we are aware of our body posture. 90 degrees is that comfort level for all working stations. That's where we want to be at. And we just really want to make sure that your ironing table, your cutting table, your sewing table, everything is adjusted to your height and it fits you personally. And this works out well if you have a room in your house for all of your projects, because it's just fitted for you and you're not going anywhere where you may have to readjust. So if you just adjust it one time, then you're good to go. So I just want to make sure that you guys are able to sew safe and sew smart. And I hope that you guys learned a few things. And I believe that there were some handouts distributed as well that can be good references for you to go back if you have specific questions or to reference on what type of table height that you are needed to be the most ergonomic.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. I feel like we've learned a lot about standing and sitting, and I'm sure a lot of us practice that when we think about it, and it's always a good reminder, though, because I know myself when I get sewing, I can get very concentrated and not get up and not move. And I like Sheila's tip earlier. Somebody had told her that they do laundry while they're sewing. So they get up and down and they're actually doing a different action. So I think that's a really good idea. And I always have my ironing in a different location than my sewing. And I
That's
encourage
perfect.
that. Yeah. And in class, anybody that's been in my classes know I don't like those irons right beside their machines. So we do appreciate that. Thank you so much, Natalie. And I'm going to check in with Alethea and see if there's any questions in our chat room specifically about ergonomics.
Nope, we have no questions at this time.
Okay, great. I hope we are maybe running just a little bit behind. I do want to emphasize that the next part is the fun part of this conference or little Zoom that we're having. And we're going to go into showing some videos on new features and enhancements to sewing machines. Now, this is not all of the enhancements and new things that we have on sewing machines, but some of us can remember and have maybe even one of these in our repertoire, which is a featherweight. This is from probably the 1950s. And that featherweight was something that perhaps our mother had, and maybe even you have right now. It serves its purpose. We still all like to use our featherweights, but there are certainly a lot of different machines on the market right now, and they have all kinds of enhancements and really new tricks. And if you've not had an opportunity to investigate new machines, or you're not like me, you can watch without having to buy. It's fun to see what they do and all the neat features. So we're going to show some videos, and they're going to be one right after the other on new features of sewing machines, serger, and long arm and sitting quilting machines. So I hope you will stay
Mary,
with
I'm
us.
chiming in real quick just to give everybody the chance to turn your audio up.
Yes.
If you have a volume control on your screen, you need to turn that up just about as loud as you can get it, because we do have a soft-spoken gentleman.
Yes, that was going to be my little tip. Turn up your audio, everybody. And that would be help you to hear him at the beginning of it for sure. So enjoy the movie, okay? Take it away, Lucy.
From Quilter's Trunk Sewing Center, just south of Liberty in the South Fork Creek community. Welcome to the store today. We'll be reviewing some of our latest technology available in the quilting and sewing room. Sewing machines have changed a lot in the years that have come and gone, and we are just going to be looking at a few things that have changed and made quilting and sewing so much easier. This particular machine has become very popular with the sewing and quilting ladies because of one particular feature I'm going to show you here, and that is this laser beam that has just come up, making it so much easier to sew corner to corner across squares. And it is also adjustable to align up 1/4 inch side to side, making it very user-friendly. So that is just one of many features in the current machines that make it so much easier to quilt today.
if you all notice, there's survey up, so make sure you guys fill that out or complete your poll. And while we're transitioning, I realize you may have more than one machine.
Spreading the Baby Lock Altair. All right, so the demonstration here today is showing how modern machines will do applique in the hoop, in the embroidery hoop. So we have taken this project and we're going to demonstrate how we are appliquing the pickup part of it. Earlier we showed how to use the die to cut out the fabric on the AccuQuilt. This is the actual die. We have cut out the piece. We've put a small amount of adhesive on the back, and we have downloaded the embroidery file onto the Baby Lock Altair, and it is going to lay down a stitch for us, showing us where to put the first piece of fabric. So we will proceed. And now we will set the fabric in place. And now we'll hit the start button again. Another feature we decided we were going to talk about today is something that has made sewing, applique, quilting, and also patching much easier in today's world. Is on some of the higher end sewing machines, you can now sew in multiple directions. And we're going to demonstrate that first of all in a straight stitch. On this particular machine, we can sew in 360 degrees in any direction. So I am first going to sew in a straight line. I've tied off on my straight stitch. I'm going to increase my speed. I've stopped. I'm going to stop in my needle down position. I'm now going to sew at 90 degrees to the right. Now I'm going to sew backwards. You'll notice my stitch isn't very good because I didn't do a very good job of guiding my fabric. And now I'm going to sew back to the left. Now I can head across this square in any direction. And I'm going to cut, and we've just done a very simple demonstration. I never moved my fabric, so we can sew in any given direction. Another common application of sewing in multiple directions is the common applique stitch. Some ladies would call this their buttonhole stitch. I'm going to show you a couple of features on this machine that ladies really do like. We're going to sew forward first with this applique stitch. And you can see that the stitch is taking a straight stitch down the right side with the bite to the left. If I have a project in the middle of my quilt and I do not want to turn my whole quilt around, let's say I'm appliquing a stem of a flower, I can now take my stitch and mirror that stitch and sew down the other side. Never having to turn the quilt around in my machine. On this particular machine, with the ability to sew left and right comes the ability to sew wide stitches that are up to 1.5 inches wide. Customers like to use that feature to sew stitches such as this decorative stitch shown on the screen in the sashing between blocks, which gives them the quilted look without having to do it free motion. So I'm going to demonstrate that stitch here on the machine right now. My responsibility is to just guide the fabric, not to feed the fabric. The machine itself takes care of it. Okay, this is Bernina's newest air threading serger. called the L890. Now I am going to show you how to thread. It is an air threading serger. We're going to step it through the threading mode. I'm going to turn my dial over. We're going to move it out of position so you can see what happens here. And we are going to thread. I hold my thread above the port and step on the foot. And here is my thread. My foot moves out of the way. There is my upper looper. All right. And our lower loopers are threaded, just like that. It is just that easy.
So guys, we have another poll in progress. Do you have a serger? Make sure you respond to that poll.
This is a 16-inch deep long arm quilting machine. This is the sit-down model for Bernina. It is stitch regulated. The two stitch regulated cameras are right here, and they sense the motion of the fabric when we move it, and it maintains stitch length. So I'm going to demonstrate that feature here in just a little bit. There are a couple of unique things about Bernina's long arm machines that we like. Number one, they use a standard sewing machine needle. So you can use a stretch needle, you can use a sharp, you can use a ballpoint, you can use a jeans needle, you can even quilt with a double needle. So that is, it kind of sets them apart in that aspect. You can also use the famous Bernina foot control, which has the kickback feature, the needle up, needle down on the foot, built into the foot control. So we're going to pull up our thread here, and we are going to get started. Tie it off. And now we are going to start. You'll notice as I go slowly, the machine goes slow. As I speed up, as I go slowly, the machine goes slowly, and it's maintaining my stitches per inch that I have programmed. All right, one other feature that this provides is a idle mode, which I can set here on the screen. I'm going to set this to 150, and when I do patterns with a point in it, it will now idle at a slow rate of speed in my points. Cut.
This is huge.
Okay, gone are the days when to have a long arm quilting machine, you had to have a huge amount of space. This is a 5-foot option. It still allows you to have a stitch regulated machine on a 5-foot quilting frame. This quilting frame is a clamp-in quilting frame. It does come with what we call a pole upgrade that allows you to pin your quilt in and advance it. That option is not currently on this machine. It also comes with a light pole upgrade. If you have your own lights, that's great. If you don't, these are adjustable in height and they are independent of the frame and can be added at any time. This is a stitch regulated model. You touch the button for starting, set the amount of stitches you want per inch. And that is it.
Okay. Well, I hope that everybody has enjoyed watching some of the new features out there on sewing machines. And I could tell by chat and comments that they can blow you away if you sew a lot and you're not keeping up with the latest machines. I know that I don't have any of those really fancy machines, but I sure enjoy watching them work. So it's a fun thing to do. Just a little bit of we are now coming to the end, and we've gone a little bit over, but we're at the end of our session today on Zoom, and I hope that everybody has enjoyed it. And I hope that you, if you have more questions right now before we do get off of here, if you want to put those in chat for us, please feel free to do that right now. We're going to hang around, the agents in the area, we're going to hang around. We'll be the last ones to leave the Zoom. But if you enjoyed this, we definitely want to hear from you. And we want to put up a survey as this finishes and completes. Make sure you take the time to do the survey for us. And then we also, in probably a month or so, we'll be sending you another survey or evaluation by email that we also hope that you will take the time to fill out for us. I think the poll questions have been very, very good today, and we've enjoyed getting your all's answers. Several of you have asked about where Michael was doing that. That was Michael Johnson. He's the owner of Quilter's Trunk. That is a fabric and sewing center that's located outside of Liberty, Kentucky. It's about, I think it's about 5 to 7 miles on the other side of Liberty from me, which means it's, he has a lot of fabrics for quilting and such, but he not only sells the machines and things there, but he has ironing, he has all kinds of threads. If you're a needle worker, he has quite a supply of those types of supplies if you need those. So it's worth a little trip, a little jaunt down to Quilter's Trunk just to see what they have and to enjoy your visit with Michael. They sell Berninas down there and baby locks, but I do want to reiterate that there are other machines, other companies that sell machines that have the same features or features that are very similar. So when you get ready to go purchase a new sewing machine or maybe a long arm quilting machine, make sure that you take the time to look at different brands, different companies, and check it out. We didn't want to necessarily promote just Bernina today, but that is what he sells at his shop. So we certainly appreciate him letting us come and visit with him today. Or, well, actually, that was a week or so ago. So we enjoyed our visit down there. You received by email all of the handouts that go with this lesson. We want you to make sure that if you did not receive the handouts, that you tell us in chat by email, give us your email address and let us know, and we'll do that right now. We did it earlier, but we'll do it again right now. If you put your email in there already, don't put it again. But if you are new or you just have joined us, or maybe you did not put your email address in there, let us know at this moment so we can mark that we have all new people. We have some questions, and like I said, we're going to linger by Zoom here and answer some of the questions, but feel free to leave this meeting if you have, if you're ready to go. So goodbye, everybody. I certainly have enjoyed doing this program today, and it was fun to get ready for it as well. It's about one of my favorite topics, which is sewing, and I hope you have enjoyed it as well. So do my coworkers have anything to add to what? Because I'm actually in the basement. I've been relegated to the basement, you all.
I just want to remind everybody to use the links in the chat. One, for your sign-in sheet, because halfway through the program, Elizabeth let us know there were only 23 people, and this whole time we've had more than 100 people. And also the link to our evaluation. And so I put that in the chat. I used all capital letters, so if you need to scroll up and down through the chat to find the link for the sign-in sheet, all capital letters, or the evaluation, all capital letters.
I would like to say that, yes, we've had some commercials during our chats over there, and we appreciate that. We realize doing this by Zoom is not the same as being in person, so we couldn't cover every single thing that we wanted to cover, but I do appreciate those of you mentioning the American Sewing Guild. I know that I'm a member of the Lexington chapter, so I would encourage you, if you are a sewer, to check that out. I would also like to acknowledge the Master Clothing Volunteers. That program has been going on now for 30 years in Kentucky. This year was a recruiting year, and we had, during the pandemic, we had some new recruits. We do recruiting every 2 years. So if you have not checked out that program, or you think you might be interested in it, we will have a recruiting class again in 2 years, 2022. It's great if you want to share your love of sewing with others. It's great for that because you get all prepared and get certainly informed so that you can go out and teach sewing. But personally, it also benefits you because the fellowship with the other sewists that are out there, as well as the learning that goes on just in your own life for sewing is tremendous. But the fellowship with other people is wonderful. It's such an inspiring thing to do. So it's inspiring to be around other people who sew and create. Okay, so we are still keeping track of everybody, and I see that people are slowly leaving. Alethea, I'm going to let you check in with some of those questions that we have not gotten to, but we want to now because we have ended our program.
Sure. A couple of the questions that were answered a while back have been recently answered in the chat box. So if you asked a question a few presentations ago, double check, because we had an answer for the question about cork, what kind of needle you should use on that. Sharps or leather needles are good for cork. That was in the chat box here just recently. And then, let me scroll down.
Alethea, did we answer the question about sewing on cork?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The sewing room answered it, and they said sharps or leather needles are good for it.
Thank you.
Then we have a question about where you can get your serger repaired. where can you get one repaired?
Well, you definitely could take it to the quilter's trunk. No
Yes.
problem. Michael definitely worked on it, and Jesse. I'm sure there's other places too, depending upon where you're located.
Right. And I am going to let the sewing room, do you ladies want to respond to that, please? Because we are located in Woodford County right now for this Zoom, and many of you that are participating are right here in Central Kentucky and surrounding. So, ladies in the sewing room, you want to answer that?
I mean, if you call your local extension office, we know there are people on here from various parts of the state. A lot of times, not all the time, a lot of times your local FCS agent will know of local places that you can take your sewing machine to get repaired. But I'll let the sewing room chime in now.
So I'll type it in the chat, but Tommy Goins here in Versailles repairs machines. Including sergers.
Including sergers. I would highly recommend him. I have brought him 5 sergers at a time to clean and make sure they work. He's very good, and he certainly is wonderful with older sewing machines, but he also works on newer ones. I think, Elizabeth, doesn't he work on electronic ones as well? Or maybe not, maybe not.
No, not electronic.
Right. If you received or you picked up your sewing machine from a dealer, I would highly recommend that you call them when you need service. And usually they let you know as far as cleaning and those types of services that you might need with your electronic sewing machines. Certainly check with them first before you just randomly let somebody work on your sewing machine.
All right. So we have another question about sewing machines. Which sewing machine would you recommend for a beginning quilter?
That is a question that many of us who do sew, we get that question. I think that it really depends on your skill level and what you want to do, and a lot of things, a lot of different things.
Level and budget.
Yeah, and your budget, because you can certainly spend as much as you want to spend on your sewing machine. So if you want to get in touch with me at the Gary County Extension Office, if you want to talk to me personally about it, if you have a question about something, I would feel comfortable doing that. But we don't recommend any particular brand of sewing machine because everybody has such different skill level and how much they want to work at sewing. And like Lucy said, the budget really can determine what you want to, what kind of machine you want to get. And what kind of features? Yeah.
I was going to say, Mary, don't you think too, just checking out all the different machines that are out there, looking at the features and really determining what it is you want to do with that machine.
Right. When you go to a sewing center, such as Quilter's Trunk, I know Continental Sewing in Lexington, Sew a Lot in Lexington, there's other places around the state that sell sewing machines. They will let you sit down and, try out different levels of sewing machines. I recommend that you do that. Even Joann's, we have several of those in our state. They will let you try out machines as well and answer questions. It kind of varies on what you want as far as that. Was there another question, Alethea?
Yes. Do you use, this one's about needles for, the Master Clothing Volunteers. So do you use ballpoint or stretch needles for fabrics or clothes with any stretch?
Our sewing room.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure.
Alice.
Do you use ballpoint or stretch needles for fabrics or clothes with any stretch?
Generally, you would use the ballpoint. The ballpoint is, I probably should sit down. The ballpoint is designed to, when you sew on a knit, it separates the fiber so it doesn't break it. The sharp of the, can't think, the other one is more for if you have heavy, like thick stretch fabrics, like if you're making swimwear or something where the stretch is different than just a knit that you want to make a knit top. So that's why you would use the different preference, the different needles for that. Did that answer your question?
But there's some wovens that have stretch, and I just use normal stretch.
Well, and it's not to say you couldn't even use a universal on some wovens and, like a real lightweight or something. But generally, that's why you want to use a ballpoint, especially if you're, put some money into some of the knits are quite pricey. I mean, you want to use the best equipment that you can, and the needle is fairly, inexpensive. So if it makes all the difference and takes better care of your fabric and gives you a better finished product, then you'd be glad that you did do that extra time to put a different needle in that fits your project better.
That is very good advice, because if you've ever not changed your needle out and you were sewing on a knit and got a run or a snag, you will regret that. So yes, it's worth switching out your needles.
We are 20 minutes past the hour. At this point, this is what we call the after party. So if you want to turn your video back on and ask an informal question, we welcome you to do so.
Yes. Alethea, anything else in chat that we need to address? Because I'm not looking at the chat.
Yeah, we had a couple from back earlier on. One of them was about the U-turn, asking what was meant by the U-turn. If you could demonstrate that again.
It's the U-turn. If you're using a bobbin that you place into the machine for once the bobbins are in the bottom, the direction, check your manual. That's the best way to do it. But I've been told they should all be counterclockwise, except that I have a machine that goes clockwise, but then it turns around before it comes out of that. So if your bobbin is set so that there's, I don't know how to do that with no things.
Easiest way for me to teach kids and others to do that is to make sure, she called it a U-turn. Sewers have different ways of describing it. But when you are looking at your bobbin, straight down looking at your bobbin, and the thread is coming off of it, if it is in the shape of a P, the letter P, that is correct. Okay, that's how you put it into your bobbin holder, if you have one that you insert underneath, or if you're putting it in just the bobbin slot on top of the machine. So if it's in the shape of a P, is really easy for people to remember. But she called it a U-turn, and it is a U-turn. You take the thread around there, and then you are U-turning with your thread.
You U-turn it to get it out of that one piece.
The top, which would basically
be
the leg
on top. But I have a machine that also does the same thing, but it goes the other direction.
Coming off here.
So instead of a P, it would be
right.
P.
Certainly, always check what your manual says. And if you've lost your manual, or maybe it didn't come with a manual because you bought your sewing machine at the garage sale, or your neighbor was giving up hers, you can pretty much go online and find all the manuals as long as you have your model number and your brand. I haven't had trouble finding any manuals to sewing machines that I've looked up, and I've looked up some that are 75 years old. Always look at your manual, how they show you how to do that. But that's what she meant by the U-turn, is how that bobbin, the thread comes off of the bobbin.
Cool. Let's see, one more question. What's the difference between embroidery and gold embroidery?
Okay, that's an and question. Or a Candy question. That's the sewing room.
Let's do it. What was the question?
Are you talking about the thread, or the just difference in the thread, or the difference in what needle you use?
You'll probably either need your masks on or.
I'm not 100% sure. That's all they wrote in the chat.
What's the difference between embroidery and gold embroidery?
Uh-huh.
Oh, on your needles. It's just a more premium needle, or a titanium coated or something like that. It looks pretty. It's bling.
Lovely.
I will say for those folks who entered their email in the chat for not receiving handouts, I think I have gotten all of those. So if you'll check your emails and make sure you've received the handouts, if you're one of those folks, I think I've gotten them all. And as far as the email, there are lots of emails being put in the chat because the survey, but Elizabeth has fixed the survey. So if you want to try that survey again, and it will give you the option, should give you the option to enter your email. So.
Yes. And I think one of the questions was, would you like to receive notification if we're doing other sewing programs and sewing or needlework programs? And so we appreciate it if you do let us know that. We'll put them out there. We're doing mostly everything online now. And so we're having sewing online.
Is this a commercial for something in April, maybe, Mary?
Oh, well, thank you, Lucy. We have a big sewing program coming up. Fort Herod Agents, we decided that we would take over and host the Sewing Expo that has happened in Northern Kentucky the last few years. It was always very successful in Northern Kentucky. They're just not able to continue with that. So we have decided to take that over and do the Sewing Expo. It will be held at the Boyle County Extension Office. It is in April. It's April 12th, 13th, 14th, right around in there. And we'll certainly be sending out lots of notifications and invitations to come to that. Right now, we are planning to have an in-person recognizing social distancing and other safety measures. But if for some reason we are not able to do it in person, we will certainly be changing it up and doing alternative methods. But we hope that this
is a Facebook page for that, for those folks that use Facebook.
Yes, Facebook page. If you put in sewing, I think it's under Sewing Expo, or is it Fort Herod Sewing Expo? Not real sure, but
I'll try to find it and post it in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you.
While you're looking for that, we have one last question.
Sure.
Last one, I promise. Okay, so what is the best way to dispose of used needles, and can they be recycled?
Well, in my little bit of research, a lot of people were using like a medicine bottle or a Tums container or a Tic Tac box or something where they could put their broken needles or whatever in that. And that way, when you dispose of it properly, then it's contained in that container. Some people suggested like wrapping them in tape or something to keep especially if you had a slight needle point broken off or something to hold it securely, because you can lose those little pieces of metal. One of my little tips was you can use them to hang a picture with. It has a nice big shaft on the side that catches your picture wire, and it goes in the wall, makes a teeny tiny little hole. So there you go. You've got a new nail to hang a picture with. But on the research that I did Google search for ways to dispose of them or whatever. And some of them suggested with your needles or your rotary blades and stuff that I would think you'd have to have a lot, but they suggested that you contact somebody that takes metal or something in your area. But I don't know that any of us would, unless we combined our collection of broken or used equipment, that we might not have enough to really fool with that. But you do want to dispose of them safely because they are sharps, just like in the medical field or something. When they get rid of needles and stuff, they are needles. They could puncture or hurt someone. So you do want to take care with that. Not many people use film canisters anymore, but that was always a good little throwaway container. You could put that near your sewing machine or whatever, but you can just be creative on how you collect them and then throw them away as contained in some sort of container. But the medicine bottle works great because you can use the caps that are for, if you can't open the caps, like the tops that the children can't open or whatever. And that way they stay secured in that bottle.
Right. Thank you, Ed. There's all different ways to contain your used needles. And
Mary, I think it's time for another commercial.
I think it is. I would like to advertise our upcoming craft camp. We have in Fort Herod the Homemakers Cultural Arts Craft Camp that we host every year. This coming year, I should say, 2021 in June. It is, and somebody give me the dates. We're all off the cuff here, but it is, I believe, the same weekend as Father's Day this coming year. We will have, it's not an overnight. We will be hosting it at the Boyle County Extension Office. And yes, it's just a popular place, that Boyle County.
11th and 12th of June.
Thank you.
No, 19.
I will get, no, it's, yeah. It's the 17th, 18th, 19th.
Yeah.
Yes, thank
18th,
you.
19th.
18th and 19th. It will not be, well, you personally could spend the night in Danville if you wanted to, but it will not be one of those situations where you will spend the night. We'll have various classes. We are looking for teachers that would like to participate and offer classes. It is in June, so we're hoping that we will be able to move forward with our craft camp in person. If you are interested in receiving the craft camp teacher's application, just let us know right now if any of you that are left on here and would like that. And if you have a friend or somebody that you think that would really enjoy coming and teaching, certainly pass along this information. We won't decide on classes until January, so you still have plenty of time to get your application in as a teacher. And I think that was a good commercial. Is there any other commercials? On your screen, you see us thanking the persons that helped out with this seminar today. And I certainly want to thank my coworker, Eric, who is not a person who sews. And he thoroughly enjoyed, I think, his visit to Quilter's Trunk and filming all of the magic in the sewing machines because, again, we just showed a few of the features in the sewing machines. There's so many enhancements to things now that you can do on your machines.
Mary, I'm going to give you 2 minutes for one more commercial. How often do the Master Volunteer in Clothing Constructions recruit?
We recruit every 2 years on the even numbered years. So 2020 was a recruiting year. We had a successful recruiting year because we moved forward with our training. And of course, it was all by Zoom this year, not in person, but we will do this again for the year 22-22. And
2022.
2022.
I don't plan on being here in 22-22.
Wouldn't that be amazing though? And let's hope the program is still going. But 2022, we will have another recruiting class. And by then, surely we'll be meeting in person. It'll be a lot of fun. That's a really great program, especially if you love to sew and you like to pass them along.
This has been a wonderful after party. I am going to give until 12:35 for any remaining conversations or questions. Then I'm shutting it down.
Okay, thank you, Lucy.
Hey, Mary, shall we give a little shout out for our upcoming quilting project for next Saturday, the 21st of November?
I think that's lovely, Rita. I'll let you do the commercial for that. It's a sewing online by Zoom that Rita Stewart and myself are hosting. We've done this before, and we're going to do another one. And what is this one, Rita?
Well, this one is going to be a really awesome. It's going to be a machine piece tabletopper pattern. It is super cute. I should actually go and get mine and hold it up and let you see it. But it's going to be really awesome. It's fairly simple. We got some great techniques in it. We got some Bargello techniques, borders, setting triangles. We've got lots of great techniques planned for this particular project. Plus, it's just really, really cute. So it will start at 9:30 and we'll end at 2:30 p.m. And we will have all kinds of demonstrations and samples, and then lots of times for you guys to share and ask questions. So there is a registration link we're going to be sending out maybe later today or Monday, but probably today. And it's already out there. Some of you may have received it. So we welcome you to join us for that next Saturday.
Okay, so I am going to basically Rita's getting the sample to show everybody. If there's not any other questions or anything, I'm going to get off of this. I've been relegated to the basement and I've been playing around with the lights down here. So there you go. Rita's holding up our class.
That's really hard to show
Yeah.
you. It's actually a square, and then you've got these awesome little points on the sides. So you get to do all kinds of great little techniques.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be happy to send it to you.
Yes. Okay. I personally am going to end Zoom right here for me, and I want to say goodbye. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Bye.